Hello. I'm just trying to check, see if I am live or not. Hmm. I do not know if I'm live or not because it's been so long since I've done this. Oh, I think I am live. Okay. Let's see. So, hello, everybody. If there is anybody out there, I would love to hear from you. If you can just type in the chat that you're here. Otherwise, I have no idea if there is actually anybody out there, and it's been so long since I've done a live. I'm not sure that I am actually live. I think I am. So I'm going to proceed as if I am. So welcome back to Sketchy Saturday. We are going to be doing this little African wild dog today. He is right here in the corner of my screen. So I will just quickly go over the pencils that we will be using. Probably I will only be using an HB for this, possibly a 4B, but if you have the pencils available, and if you want to have them handy, we're going to possibly be using the HB, the 4B, and the 4H. Kara, thank you. Oh, thank you for saying something. Okay, I wasn't sure that I was live. So hi, Kara. Nice to be back. Yes, I hope you had a great summer. So I'm just starting by going over the tools that we will be using and obviously our sketchbook. And I'm probably going to use an HB, a 4B, and possibly a 4H for this. So we're doing this little wild African wild dog. What else will we use? We may probably need our kneaded eraser. And we might need our Tombow eraser. And what else? We will need probably a brush, very soft brush. And if you have it handy, we might use a blending stump. Not sure if we'll use that or not. And graphite powder if you have it. If not, it's just basically to put a little bit of shading in the background. So if you don't have it, don't worry about it. Okay, so we're going to get started on this. So again, a reminder, because it's been a while, these are sketches. They're not drawings. They're not meant to be fabulous. They're not meant to be anything more than just a scribbled little sketch. We'll be doing it mostly to just to figure out angles and proportions, that kind of thing. Oh yes, I have an example here. I'm not going to unclip my book because I've got it actually clipped to my board. I've changed my setup a bit. But here's an example of what a sketch is. Very scribbly. This is a sketch that I just recently did for a drawing that I'm doing. So I just wanted to figure out, composition on this and get an idea of colors and that kind of thing. So that's all a sketch is. It's just going to be very, very rough. So generally speaking, I prefer not to spend more than about a half an hour on a sketch, max, depending on what it is and the purpose of it. But so we'll get started. So basically what I'm looking at first, I'm constantly referring back to my reference. So what I'm looking at is the angles I can't actually get onto this, so maybe I'll hold up my reference. I printed it out. There we go. I'm going to be starting, by looking at the angles on his head. Why are we... Lighting is a bit bad on this. So I'm looking at the angle that comes down from the ears versus the angle of the nose. So the angle that comes down on his forehead is a little bit steeper than the angle that's coming down for his nose. So I'm looking at that angle, I'm looking at this angle as compared to this bottom jaw angle. Proportions, I'm looking at lengths, I'm looking at the entire length of his head. So his head would come to about here between his ears. I'm looking at that length versus that length. They're almost identical. So I know I want his head to be about as long as his neck. The ears are shorter than the length of the face of the, not by much, they're about maybe 2/3. If you can take your pencil and actually measure how long everything is, how wide the neck is. So I'm taking a good look at my reference before I even get started, just to kind of work those angles out. As I said, I've got a little bit of a different setup, so I'm hoping that you can see okay, and I'm hoping, in fact, I think I'm going to change my light a bit. It might be a little too bright. I'll try this. And I want to make sure that I am in focus and you can hear me correctly, right? I'm presuming you can hear me. If you can't, let me know. There we go. I think I'm in focus. Okay, so we're going to get started with the head. And I want to make sure that I don't run out of room on either side. So I might actually draw a little box, kind of a shape, just so that I know where to keep my not to go past certain lines. That is not showing up very well, is it? Let me just check. Oh yes, it is. Okay. All right. So now, just using my pencil very lightly, if I draw an imaginary box around my actual reference photo, so if I draw an imaginary box like this, helps me to really, well, you can even draw a real box on your reference if you have it printed out. Really helps me to see the angles. So this angle of his face is almost on a 45-degree angle. So we're going to start with that. So this is the corner of my box. I'm going to come down about like this for the forehead. And then this is where the eye comes down, where the eye starts and the nose dips. That's actually called the stop. So the stop comes down just slightly and it comes down on a shallower angle than the top. It's just very slight though. And these two distances, the nose is a little bit shorter than the forehead, not by much. And then I know the ears are going to go there. So I just want to get the placement basically. And then at the nose here, we've got, it's a little bit sort of pointed. And I'm just doing this very roughly. And then it comes down again. If you had a box there, the muzzle from his nose to the bottom of his jaw comes down again, almost in a 45-degree angle. So I've got my angles correct. And then coming back up, and my nose is too short. So you can always correct that. Let me just erase what I put in. There we go. So then his jaw is not on the same angle as the top of the nose. It comes down a little bit flatter. something like that. And then there's the throat area comes down, something like that. And then it gets into the neck and all the hair. So I just want to make sure my placement on the face is all correct. So if this is the nose, I'm coming back up to the nose and looking at my reference, which is a little bit hard to see. It's a little bit dark. I'm just going to kind of draw in that nostril area. It comes down like that. Let me just check to make sure that that's showing up. And then from that upper lip comes down in about a 45-degree angle. And then it starts to curve in. And he's almost kind of got a little bit of a smile going on there. And then the bottom jaw comes out like that. And it's actually a little bit flatter, I think. Something like that to the neck. Then I'm looking at the eye area. And if you look very closely at the reference, you can tell that his head is very, very, very slightly turned towards us. And the reason you can tell that is because I can see his other eye. I can see the line going right down the middle of the forehead, and then there's a little bit of fur showing on the other side. So that's how I can tell that. So right here at the stop, I'm going to put in just a little indication here with some fuzzy kind of eyelashes that you can partially see the other eye. And then on this side, his eye is directly above where his jaw ends and goes into the throat. So I'm constantly comparing these angles to get my positioning right. So if I come up here, I'm just going to draw a round circle just to give me the placement of where that eye is. So I want to measure from the other eye. How far down is it from where we're seeing that other eye? So once I've got the placement correct, then I've got to get the shape correct. And this is very much of a almond-shaped eye. So if you're working with an almond-shaped eye, you've got your circle for the eye, and his eyes are very dark. We're not going to worry too much about highlights. And then it comes down to the corner and down to the other corner. So he ends up with an almond-shaped kind of an eye. Okay. He's smiling a little bit too much, maybe. Then I want to get the ears in. Just going to take a sip of water. So for the ears, whoops, this one is forward. And again, so the length of this first ear, of the top forward ear, is almost the length of the forehead. So, and my forehead, I think, is a little bit too long, or else my nose is not. I think I'll just shorten my forehead. So his ear comes up to about here. Yeah, because my nose is actually a little bit too short. So rather than change all that, I'll just bring the ear down a little bit. So the ear is very much sort of a, think of an egg. It's very much of an oval. At the top, it's more pointed, and it's about the same length of this. So about there, comes down about there. Let me just get rid of the other line. And we're seeing completely the inside of the ear is showing on this one. So I'm going to give him a little bit of, well, let's not worry. Actually, let's not worry about that for now. We're just going to get the shapes in. So that comes down to here, and then the back of his ear comes down, right down, level almost with his eye. That back of the ear. So I'm kind of out of proportion, but that's okay. And then the other ear comes off right around the same distance, the same distance down as the forehead here. And it comes up and around, and it's a little tiny bit higher than this one. Round into a point, and rounding again down. And there's a little bit of a jut out here. And then we continue his forehead here, which will interrupt that ear. Something like that. Do you have any questions? Anybody? Okay, I don't think so. Okay, so then this neck comes out at, pretty much compared to your framing box, comes out at about a 45-degree angle. Right down to his withers, where the back then goes pretty straight. Okay, and then back underneath the throat, and I'm just doing some very scribbly kind of lines here, little scribble strokes to indicate that fur. And then right about halfway down his neck is where you can see the shoulder, which is where the fur changes. So right here, if I'm looking at my reference, right here, there's his leg down here. This would be his shoulder blade. So on an animal, right over the shoulder blade, they've usually got a little bit of a hump, and that's called the withers. So, and then from the withers, his shoulder blade comes down like this. So, and this little spot here is where like his leg continues into the neck. So that's the part we're going to draw, is just how this angle comes down and goes into the leg. And I want to make sure that I've got the shoulder blade is kind of imaginary, but I'm drawing the line just to show, and then his leg would come down from there. Got lots of fur there, and he's got, oh, just let me check the chat. Yep, HB is good. That's what I'm using, Kara. And again, because it is a sketch, we're not going to be doing any kind of realistic shading. We're just going to be doing a little bit of hatching. So an HB is nice and soft enough that that you can do that kind of thing with it. You could also use a 4B. You can continue using your HB. I'm going to change to a 4B just because it might show up a little better because it's darker. Yeah, there we go. I'll just go over that a little bit just so that it shows. So that's all just kind of scribbled in here. And this is pretty furry in there too. Okay, so I've got his shoulder in, and his legs disappear right off of the picture. So I'm going to move my my boundary box up a little bit because that's where the drawing more or less cuts off. And then his leg will be here. And then his back, so his back comes down to here and then goes off goes to about there, and it's pretty straight. Okay, so looking at what I've got, I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to start to fill in some of this fur detail. Not a lot, but just to indicate this ear. all the way around the outside is quite dark, and it comes down like that. So I'm just doing back and forth little scribbly strokes. And then this part of the ear is all in shadow. So I'm just basically filling in this darker value. If you do have a 4B, you can change to that, and if not, just press a little tiny bit harder on your HB, and that'll give you the darkness that you need. Oops, let me check the chat. Yes, okay. Okay. And then the front ear, I do not feel that it's big enough, so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So you know, on your sketch, yours is not going to look like mine. You might have made your ear too small, like I did. You might have made it too big. So you can just go in and correct that at this stage. I think that's better. Let me just... It's a process of sort of evolution when you're drawing by eye. So this is what I call drawing by eye. I'm not using a grid or anything like that. I'm just comparing angles more or less. So you're never going to get it as accurate as you would if you were either extremely familiar with the thing that you're drawing. I mean, you know, if you're really good at doing portraits and doing human faces, then, you know, most of the time they'll turn out pretty well proportioned. I've only ever drawn one other African wild dog, so I don't know the anatomy all that well. His ear is a little bit wider up here. So yeah, you may have to adjust. Whereas if I had used a grid for this, it would be much closer to the actual proportions. Okay, I'm going to start doing some of the inner ear here. So right down the center, right down to about here, all this here part inside the ear is very dark. So I'm just doing back and forth scribbly strokes up to the top, but not all the way up to the top. And then in here, this is all fur. So you can just do some kind of like little tapered lines here to indicate that that's all fur. It's dark right out to the outer edge of his ear pretty much. And then it gets into the fur of the face. So just something like that. Okay, I'm sitting a little bit further away from my monitor, so I have to put my glasses on every time I look from my drawing to the monitor so I can see what's being said. Okay, so got that. Now, his muzzle is very, very dark. So I'm just going to make his nose very dark. His actual nose is very dark. And then from the eye, let me just figure out this eye is a little bit bigger. Something like that. Okay, so he's got this dark kind of stripe of fur, so I'm just doing a zigzag back and forth right down to where the eyes are. And I'm leaving this lighter line on the outer edge. So the dark line that I put in is right down sort of the center, so that I've got part of the other side of his forehead is showing a little bit. And then that dark comes right down into the nose. It comes around the eye. So again, I'm just doing scribbly, soft. I'm not using hardly any pressure. Very soft pressure. And then I'm trying to establish where that dark is. Comes down or where the light is actually is, I want to, because this is all light, this will all be dark. And then there's a little bit of dark coming up here, the dark fur. So you can see I'm just being very, very scribbly. And then that light fur curls around, something like that. Okay, so now I know where I want my darks. And the darkest areas are right around the eye. So just very scribbly, back and forth kind of strokes. But not going right up to the eye. Just almost to the eye, but not quite. And then just going to fill that in with these back and forth strokes. The top of the muzzle is lighter than the middle part and the underjaw. So the underjaw, other than right about here, is all very, very dark. So I'm going to fill that in. And you can go over your line of the mouth with harder pressure if you want it to show, or not. You don't need it to show. It hardly shows at all on the reference. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue to fill this in, just scribbly, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Depending on your paper and depending on the grade that you're using, it should pretty much blend all in. So once I've got that all in where I want the dark, then I'm going to go back over it and deepen some of the dark where it's darker, where it's the darkest. So this comes down into his throat, and the throat hair is not as dark. So this dark all comes around kind of like this is where it's the darkest. So I know it's the darkest there, so now I'm going to go back right under his eye. There's a little bit of kind of a shade, kind of a line, sort of. So I'm just going to scribble that in. And the top I'm going to leave because I think that's dark enough, but just around close to the top. And the way I get it to merge, to blend, is just lighten up my pressure as I come away from the top. And then deepen my increase my pressure as I get lower down towards the lip. And that makes it darker, but leaves it a little bit lighter on the top. And then under here, this is all very dark. You also should be, I should have said this earlier, it doesn't really matter again because it is a sketch and they're kind of all blending in anyway, but your strokes, anytime you do an animal, have your strokes going the same way as the fur is going. That way, if any of the strokes do show, they do look like fur. So that's all very dark. And it comes kind of up in these little swirls into the rest of the fur. And you'll see I'm kind of drawing on the side of my pencil. I don't really want to get any fine lines. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Oh. Oh. Excuse me. Sorry, I still got my allergies are hanging on. Ugh. Okay. And then all this fur underneath where it's so dark, just go in and darken that again. Oh, I keep feeling like I'm going to sneeze. So all of this is much lighter than the dark that's above it, because this is black fur. As it comes down into the body, it turns into sort of a dark brownish. So I'm just using the side of my pencils going in the direction and sort of the length of the fur that's there. And just filling that in so that you get an idea that it is lighter. Sorry, I'm looking for my glasses now. Oh, they're on top of my head. Oh my goodness. Okay. So then the back of his ear comes down here, right down almost, well, it does come down to eye level, but my proportions are off, so. But right underneath the ear, very dark. And then it goes up into the ear and it stays dark. Okay. And then down here, you've got this fur coming up. So I am doing kind of fur-like strokes now and lines sort of like this, just so that I can get the indication of some of the lighter hairs in there. And then it comes up to the shoulder and all the way up here to the withers is dark. Okay. All right, then. There's a nice big dark patch right on his back. So I'm not, again, because it's a sketch, I'm not too concerned about getting it to look like individual hairs, but I am kind of going in the hair-like stroke, just a single, I'm not going back and forth. I'm pulling it out in the one stroke. And that comes forward into one of these dark patches on his body, which then comes up and it's going to be going into the tan fur. And on the other side of that tan fur, very lightly, is another dark layer of fur. And then this one, oh my goodness, this comes down into a nice, round shape of dark. Oh, excuse me, sorry for the sniffling. My nose is so itchy now. So you can see that I'm kind of pulling some of the hairs out from the edge of the spots, and that's what helps to give it the appearance of the light hairs underneath it. Oh. Okay, then right about here where this round one comes right up into there. And then he's got a nice big patch of white. Well, it's light creamy colored fur all along here, and all behind there is much darker. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I have to blow my nose. Oh. Sorry. Okay, that's a little better, I hope. And then, so all I'm doing now is I'm just pulling out these thin strokes that are sort of the length and direction that the fur is going in. And I'm just basically putting in wherever I see that the fur is darker. I'm not worrying about the light fur for now. And it comes up a little bit here. Like that. And then he's got these very dark, almost like leopard spots, actually. They're a little dark spot with lighter fur in between, in the inside it. And then this one here, you want to make sure you leave two kind of lighter areas. You can draw them in like that and just go around them if you want. It comes down almost in a bit of a heart shape, and the one beside it is almost like a oof shape with the little lighter. Okay. And then this neck ruff comes right down, and it's very dark, and it comes down in a tiny little strip, very dark, right down to his front leg. I'll get that in. Okay. So then I'm just going to darken up his eye a bit. Okay, so then we're going to go after the lighter hair. So if you have a 4H, that would be the time to use it now for this lighter hair. If not, use your HB with a lighter pressure. So this is a 4H. And I'm going to start at the top. And I'm just going in with the same kind of strokes in the direction of and the length of where his fur is. So he seems to have fairly long hair on his head. Comes down, and so you want to make your strokes long enough to sort of give that impression. Or not, if you know, again, oh my goodness, sorry. Again, because it is a sketch, you can also just come in here and do the zigzag back and forth, and it'll give the end in the direction of the fur, and that'll give the illusion of it being fur. You don't have to actually draw the individual strokes unless you want to. Something like that. And already he's starting to look like he's got a little bit of dimension to him. Okay, then the back of his neck here, this is all very light. So I'm just going in here with my 4H, just kind of ticking out some fur. I want it to have a little bit of, to be able to see it coming off the back of his neck here. So if you've done the back of his neck a little bit dark, you can go back in, take that out, and go back in with your 4H. Just to give it a little bit of a furry, fuzzy appearance. And you will continue that all the way, and you can just do back and forth in the direction of the fur. This fur kind of curls around here, overlaps. And all this fur is coming down now. end up with something just like this. Depending too on the paper that you're using. If it's a sketchbook paper, like this is, I love this sketchbook. It's a great one. And I love the texture of the paper for sketches, but very difficult to do a detailed drawing on this because it's quite a toothy paper. So to get smooth, that's why it lends itself really well just to this kind of scribbling. Kind of like almost like hatch marks. Okay, and then the same thing on his back. He's got, I'm going to come back in with my 4B and make sure that my my little patches here are the right direction and enough of them. Because he's got this bar of lighter fur, and this might come in a little bit more. So I'll just come back in now with my 4H or your HB and use light pressure. So if I use the HB instead, I can do that. I'm just using very soft light pressure to get the impression of very light fur. Same thing in there, and then this hair is all curved, rounded a little bit, that patch. Something like that. Actually, I kind of like the HB better than the 4H for this. Okay, then all here, these are very light hairs. And it actually gets even lighter when it comes around into the front of the leg. Okay, so just something. This is all coming down in this direction. I'm just going to bring up some of these darker strokes at the neck so it doesn't look like his head is kind of just glued onto his body. I want to make the fur look like it's a little bit more coming out from the neck there. Okay, so I would say that's basically it. Mine is not in very good proportion, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry. Again, it's a sketch. Not to worry if it doesn't turn out a masterpiece. So once I've done the actual dog and I'm relatively happy with it, then what I might do is go back in and just do a little bit of blending very, very softly with my brush. And because this paper is so toothy, I don't have to blend hardly at all, and it just completely softens it. So you might not want to, depending on the paper you're using. See, that just completely blends and gets rid of any of the pencil strokes. And then for his body, it works good for his body for the light, where the light hairs are. Just kind of helps to blend it all in. Same thing for his ears. So something like that. And in my case, I don't know if you have done the same thing, but if you put a binding box around it, you might want to take that out. And that way you can give them a little bit of a background. I'm just erasing that. And rather than having this sharp boundary, oops, where the dog's body kind of comes to a sharp, abrupt end, you can take your brush and softly just come down over that, just so it kind of blends into the paper. Okay. Okay, so then I think what I would do for this one, you can see in the reference photo behind him in the distance over here, it looks like there's either trees or grasses, one or the other. So I would probably take a dirty stump, and if it's not dirty, you can either dip it in some graphite powder if you have it, or you can scribble some 6B or 4B on your paper and pick it up. But I'm just going to go in where I've already got the pencil laid down dark. You can also blend with one of these. It gives it not quite as soft a look, but you can use it to do that. So I've got this nice and saturated with some powder or some pencil. So I'm just going to come in the back here, and I'm going to, oops, sorry, I'm trying to figure out a way to do it that you can see what I'm doing, but I'll come in here and just draw with the stump, with the dirty stump, to put in some trees or grasses. I think they're trees. I'm not sure. Do something like that. And then if you wanted, you could take your brush, which is the same thing. If it's not dirty already, you can put more graphite powder on it. I'm going to blend this in a little bit. I like the look of it blended a bit more. And then you can just kind of put some sky in the background, little clouds and things. So just something like that. And I think that's it. Yeah, mine is not in great proportion, but again, as I said, it's a sketch. If this was a drawing, I would either, if my proportions were that out, I would probably either erase what I had and start over, because I think it's to do with his muzzle. I think that's not what's right. Not sure. Or I would do it with a grid so that my proportions were much better. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's nice to be back, and I'll be back now every 2 weeks, barring unforeseen circumstances. The first and the third Saturday of the month is when I will be doing these, and if you are subscribed to my newsletter, you'll get a little reminder along with the along with the reference photo as well. So that's it for today. So thank you very much for joining me, especially you, Kara. I think you might be the only one out there, but I appreciate you coming, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye for now.